Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started. I understand we've already been introduced, so I'm just going to jump in. My name is Rebecca Davis. I'm the COO at the Mass Competitive Partnership. For those of you that don't know our organization, my board is made up of the CEOs of 20 of the largest employers in Massachusetts. And we really believe that innovation, climate tech, and entrepreneurial support organizations are really critical to Massachusetts' overall economic competitiveness. So I feel really privileged to be with this group of leaders today. I think to start, what I'm going to ask everyone to do is to each kind of go across, talk a little bit about the organization you lead, and how does it fit into the overall ecosystem. Emily, you want to start?
Sure. My name is Emily Knight. I'm the CEO of The Engine. We are an incubator and an accelerator that supports and accelerates what we call tough tech. So technology that is the convergence of life science, engineering, really long to market, solving the world's toughest challenges. So tough technologies, tough challenges, resilient solutions, and resilient people running them. We have an incubator in Cambridge that houses about 120 companies today, spanning a million different solutions and technologies, and so really that convergence model. This was meant to be what we call an innovation orchard, so patient resources that are allowing the technologies the time they need to get to market. And then a big part of what we do, I think, is finding ways to collaborate with all of our partners. This is not a zero sum. These entrepreneurs and these companies need tons of support, and so we think a lot about getting them out of the labs, the translation piece, and then all the way to implementation, how they are going to create jobs, how they are going to create pilots, and how we can all work together.
We're going down the line?
We'll go down the line.
Hey, everyone. So my name is Georgina. I'm the new CEO of Greentown Labs as of a couple of months ago. So I'm very excited to be here. And I will stop using the word new in, maybe in a few months' time. But I feel like I'm drinking through the fire hose, so I'm going to milk that for a while. I first wanted to say thank you for Climate Tech, and this panel is epic, and I think it's so important to be putting entrepreneurial services up front and center, and Climate Tech to host a panel on this topic with incredible panelists. I feel really honored and excited for this conversation. So Greentown Labs, hands up here who has been to Greentown Labs or is affiliated with Greentown Labs, or okay. Right, so I probably don't need to tell you who we are, but leadership's all about repetition, right? So Greentown Labs, we're the largest climate and energy incubator in the world now, and what does that mean? I think we've, for the last 14 years, we've seen about 600 companies come through our doors. We've got about 100,000 square feet of innovation space in Somerville, about 40,000 square feet of innovation space in Houston. We have, I think, over the course of Greentown's history, I think our companies now have created about 17,000 jobs, raised about $8.2 billion. And Greentown's kind of really proud to have been kind of part of that journey. I think, in terms of where we fit in the ecosystem, I think Greentown, what we would say is like, a Sublime, right? Who we're all very proud of in Massachusetts, in our ecosystem. They, and Leia and team, they started with a few grams of cement in the lab, and they graduated with 250 tons per year, right, in a pilot plant. Like, that's what Greentown's all about, and that's kind of how we, I guess, plug in or fit into the ecosystem. It's all about that. First customer, first deployment. And as Emily said, super excited to be collaborating and working with. It's really important that we put on this kind of collaborative approach here, because no one can go it alone. So yeah, super excited.
Great, Cyrus.
So I want to share my thanks to the organizers having us here, and what a heck of a turnout. I wasn't expecting standing room only today. This is really exciting to be here. So I am the CEO of Activate, and for those who don't know us, we are the bridge between the best of what's happening in science labs all over the country and entrepreneurship that gets to commercialization. And the way we do it is through a 2-year fellowship. We run communities across the country. Boston is one of them, and actually our second oldest community. And you talked about Sublime. Sublime's a company that's come through Activate. We are a nonprofit, so that gives us the opportunity to do things well. One, we scout the best science talent in the country, but we are able to really support them as individuals, leaders, ability, like giving them the coaching, the mentorship, the tools to take risk, to make pivots, to even kind of reconsider what they're imagining their contribution to the world is. And the results have been really exciting. So we've had close to like 230 companies that have come out of the program, Sublime being one of them. Those companies after Activate have raised $4 billion collectively. So I think what we're really proving is investing in talent and the human capital systems is really critical. We've had a ton of success here in Boston. I'll tell you more about that in a minute. And we see a lot of potential here in Boston to go even farther. And some of that's going to be through partnership. But I think that's like reflective of why everybody's in this room, of how we drive that faster.
Great. Kate?
We have the world's best ecosystem. I think you can see it right here. It's so cool to be in partnership with these amazing organizations. I lead Mass Challenge. We're also an independent nonprofit organization, about 15 years old, globally headquartered in the Seaport offices, also in Dallas, Texas, Switzerland, Israel, and a small footprint in UK. And our mission is to solve massive challenges by helping entrepreneurs win. We do that through a network of accelerator programs that work with companies, very early product market fit, and then very early commercialization. And we're largely focused on increasing readiness, providing strategic exposure, and then ultimately getting to that first key partnership. Climate's been an awesome part of our portfolio. It's one of our 5 big bets alongside sustainable food systems, where we also see an enormous amount of climate-oriented activity. But what's cool, I think, and what we're really excited about, we'll hear a little bit about it in a Takeda panel later, is also where climate is across many other industries that we work in, healthcare, financial services, and then security and resiliency. And we think that climate horizontal, if you would, is really critical and provides many, many more opportunities for companies to build in meaningful, impactful ways.
Great. Sarah, I'm going to build off something that you said. I think maybe we could start talking a little bit about Massachusetts, Boston, and a lot of you bring both local perspective, but I also know perspective working across the country and across the world. What do we think is going well here in terms of the ecosystem, and what are some of the challenges that we could all collectively, do a little bit better?
So I think that's a great question. First off, let's just kind of name something that's going extremely well here. We are sitting around some of the best science minds in the world. I think you could probably argue a few others, but Boston is a critical mass of higher education, but not just that, research and development that's happening in labs across the many domains of hard tech, which have to lead to the things that are going to solve climate, not to mention other societal problems. So the thing that I think we can do better, it's going to sound pretty familiar, is we have to continue to find ways to build stronger bridges from those assets that are happening in the labs and how we get them into the real world. Now, there's a lot of, I'll say, dumb ways that good ideas die, and we have an incomplete, I guess, incentive structure out there for bringing these things through faster. We're talking about climate, we're not competing against each other, we're competing against the clock, and so we know we want to move faster, and so the incentive structures need to move, and I think Massachusetts has an opportunity to get really focused on how do we line up the incentive structures from start to finish, and when I finish, I mean scaled market solutions, and start is this nucleus of an idea that's happening through the geniuses that live in this city, but not just this city, in this entire state. And we believe that we can actually do a lot more on that early side, that first step out of the lab. And that's where we're focused right now, and that's where we're going to continue to cultivate relationships that help us with that.
Anyone else thoughts on that one? What's going well here? What do we need to work on?
I'll add that I think this ecosystem cares. cares about climate, cares about solving big challenges and the intersection of those two. And I think that really matters in climate. We can come back later on some of the limitations of that when you get to commercialization, but I think that really matters. The second opportunity, what we have the chance to do well at, is to build out that capital continuum. I think the fact that we did that and played the lead in biotech, which is different but similar in many ways, from lab all the way to through life, required a totally different set of investors and capabilities and even continuum. I think we have an opportunity to do that with way more intention around climate as well.
Yeah, I think I would totally agree with both of your points. I think one thing is an opportunity, maybe instead of an issue, is that we need to build. We need to be able to build things quickly. And I just heard Governor Healy talk about siting and permitting, and the way that we get from not even lab, but from our labs and incubator is to implementation, is that we have to be able to build, and we have to do that quickly. And so it's just going to take a lot of creativity. And I think we can do that. We've been doing it. I know that there's a lot of support right now, but I think to continue to push and be aggressive and be a leader the way that Massachusetts has for a number of different industries and initiatives. But that's sort of looking forward. We have to start to build and put things in the ground.
Yeah, and building on, right? I think it's important to recognize the role that brick and mortar plays in this, and Massachusetts has really invested in that, right? And we see every day. I've just been working remote for 6 years, and it was an exciting time. We actually managed to raise quite a bit of money and make a lot of progress, but you forget how lonely it is until you're plugged back into a community and walking through the doors of Greentown, going to the engine, the community there, the human side, and the value of the community that comes through and is attracted to that brick and mortar is really important. And then I would also say, just to kind of add on to a couple of the points here, in the context of Massachusetts, I think two things. One is we need to think big or bigger, and I think we need to think together. In the context of thinking big, we are not going to move fast enough and drive the energy transition in the way we want to drive it unless we go beyond the borders of Massachusetts, right? Or beyond the borders of 617. And I loved the remarks last night. And thinking about going from 617 to 413, right, to Western Mass, or going from where we are in Somerville down to Porter and Davis and beyond, right? We have to think how to spread the magic of the spirit of our programs beyond, to our doorstep, but also beyond, and then of course beyond the state. Greentown has a strong presence now in Houston, and we're seeing the value, not just of 617 going to Houston, but Houston coming back to Boston. I think there's huge strength in the power, and that kind of then speaks to the power of togetherness and kind of leaning in, and Mass is a really great role model there, right? Everybody is leaning in at this time. We know we need to move faster, and we know we need to prioritize climate tech. And finding ways to kind of bring that spirit of collaboration across different states and countries is super important at this time.
Yeah, we've heard a lot about this theme of collaboration, and I think we kind of have to acknowledge some of the kind of headwinds that are a little bit different than we had this conference last year. If we dig into that, we have folks from all different sectors here. Kind of what would you like to see, or what are you seeing as we think about the private sector, kind of the academic sector? How are we all coming together to collaborate? What are, as you have kind of some of them listening here, what would you like to see from them?
A few ideas are, if you're in a position to run a pilot or do procurement, that is really important to an early stage company. They have to have that data. So not just for innovation seeking, but because you're really interested in that technology and adoption. That is a really big one for any of the companies we work with. I think I would say that that is the number one reason why companies today do not have enough data. The sort of goalposts keep changing for funding, and there's a lot of federal funding that is frozen right now and at stake. And so if you have the opportunity, if you are a corporate or a strategic and you're engaged in any of these programs, really think about how you can partner with an early stage company, not just because innovation is fun to see, but because R&D matters and you are investing in this pipeline.
Cyrus.
Can I jump in? So I'm going to jump in because I'm staring at the logo of my previous employer, Amazon. So I'm going to start with, if I was talking to a corporate, it builds on what Emily is talking about. Send the demand signal. Like, create the market signal, and that could be done through pilots. It could be done through advanced market commitments. That's what's holding back capital that's ready to come in. Number two, if I was talking to a university, maybe a tech transfer office, I would say, trust new mechanisms for getting those ideas into the world, because we're getting a lot of friction for not great reasons in terms of moving ideas out, and I think that there's an incomplete understanding of how to value those ideas at the stage that they're incubated. So those would be two things I would probably directly point to.
Strong +1 on both of those.
I would say one ask, I think, for this community is maybe a question more so than an ask, but can we move from seeing climate tech as an industry to more of a lens, right? Like, climate tech should be touching every industry and it is, right? Already we're starting to see the momentum around steel, cement, plastics, and I think shopping. I was having a great conversation with Amazon last night, right? Like, there's just, I think that mindset of seeing, seeing climate as a lens, I think that's where the jobs are going to come from in the future. And I think now more than ever, when I talk to our member companies, the ask to us as a community of climate leaders is, we cannot deprioritize climate at this time. When you hear Chris Wright talk, right, like, he's not a climate denier. Like, he understands you can't deny the science behind what's happening, right? They are deprioritizing, right? And we cannot let that happen. And it's up to us to storytell and share the wins, share the opportunities, and get folks really excited about what is already happening. And I think the more that we can do that as a community, the faster we'll move together. And our members are asking of this of us right now. We need to amplify and put climate back on the priority list. However we can do that, but we have those stories. So that would be my ask for you guys.
Great. I think we're going to spend a lot of the day thinking about the companies and climate tech and the founders. I'd love to hear from you as you all run ESOs, kind of what are some of the biggest challenges or opportunities you see as entrepreneurial support organizations? I should say our organization just put out a report really kind of highlighting the critical nature of these organizations kind of in the ecosystem, and I think really kind of enabling Massachusetts to capture that. And I'd love to hear from you, kind of what does that feel like to lead one right now, and what's feeling hard? And
yeah. Emily and I are laughing because we're like public infrastructure, which means we're so critical to the way innovation can run through this system, not just for the benefit of one company who gets an amazing investment from General Catalyst and goes on to change the world and make great returns for the investors, but so that many, 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 many entrepreneurs can start that journey and climb that scaffolding. And so we love our work, and our models are really hard. Yeah. And so I think the biggest challenges always facing us are, how do we balance bringing strategic capital in that is critical because it's the customers that we want close, but they have a real perspective on which innovators should we be supporting and why. And then the public dollars who want the innovators to be here in Massachusetts, which may not be what the innovators want or need long term. And then philanthropy. And so I think all of us have a diversified funding model, which is, by design, but also a delicate balance. And when we zoom way out, I think we just have to keep working to keep that in balance so we can do the really critical work of finding exceptional talent that should have the opportunity to build companies and increasing their chance of doing that and then going on and changing the world.
Could I ride on that one?
Yeah.
Because you said public infrastructure. I love that point that Kate made. So I think what we're seeing right now is a failure and over-reliance on the federal government to come in and support all this foundational capability. A lot of money outside of government sources really focus on outcomes, like outputs, not inputs. And some of those outcomes are point solutions, and that's great, and we need more of that. But I think there's a foundational layer that's really slowing us down. And this is a moment for Massachusetts, because as the feds kind of change their priorities, you have all the ingredients sitting in your state to actually do this extremely well. And so I would take that responsibility seriously as a state and push even harder to go beyond the conversations and actually get the support for that foundational layer, because I think Massachusetts can lead here.
So important. I'm just going to repeat, like, public infrastructure. What we're doing is public infrastructure, libraries, museums, schools, religious entities in the cities and the towns. Like, what we do is part of the public infrastructure. It's part of the culture. It's part of the success and the growth of a region. And the more folks that can see us that way, the faster and the better we'll do together. So yeah, I love that point.
Yeah, I'm not sure I have anything. I mean, we talk a lot about how these models are really hard. I think there's also, startups are not just creating wealth for the founders. It is creating jobs, and it is economic development. And so we think of ourselves also as economic development engines and creating the right patient resources to keep companies, to keep founders and employees here in Massachusetts, and maybe not forever. We're also supporting regions across the country through an NSF grant, where we're showing them what it looks like, what we've learned here, what went well, what didn't, and supporting their regional economic development. So we also see the good in creating a national network, so that as companies scale out of here, there's infrastructure across the country. But it is infrastructure. It is, we call it escape velocity. When you're leaving a lab, you have a place to go, and you have somewhere to do that really critical early work, maybe before you've figured out your business model or before you have funding from whatever source. And it's a really hard model that all of us have, being nonprofits. And so the challenge is, how can we work together? How can we collaborate? How can we be efficient with those dollars? And also really serve our unique constituents. Some are unique, some are overlapping. But yeah, I think it's just really hard right now.
All right, well, I'm going to build off that and get to my kind of lightning round questions, which is, if you could ask everyone here for one thing to do to help, what would that one thing be?
Well, I want to emphasize, I think if you have a use case, let it be known. Yep. Because so many of our founders are deeply cause motivated, and I think that is the purpose that keeps them going, but they need to be customer oriented to actually figure out the path to scale. And it is hard to know what that actual customer need is that may be actually disjointed from the carbon problem you're trying to solve. And I think that's a really hard path to navigate for our climate founders. So the more you can do to actually let your customer need be known sooner, and then ideally lean in with them, the better. And if you are passionate about this and have something to give to an entrepreneur, knowledge, networks, resources, call us, call them. These entrepreneurs need it. And we have a way to sort of help you get out to the world and change the world through that volunteer effort.
Yeah, I would have said lean in, whether it's if you have dollars to spend, if you have money to give, that it's unrestricted. I would say lean in and be generous. If you have, if you want to be a mentor, if you want to work at one of these companies, lean in and raise your hand. I think we're all actively finding ways to collaborate and use our resources efficiently, and we'd be happy to have more people at the table.
Yeah, we're all in the business of ensuring that climate tech startups and startups in general can thrive, right? Like that's what we do. That's what we wake up every morning and think. And so my ask for folks here is think big, think together. I think they'll help us.
I think I'm going to double down on what Kate said. We don't have a failure of imagination to solve this problem. We don't. And it's not a failure of technology either. Yeah, we need more support. We get that. It's going to be a long, patient support. It's got to go a long distance. We get that. What we have, in my view, is back to the failure of incentives that actually, large institutions and governments have some say in. That's our failure. And so what that leads to is then a failure of storytelling and getting the message out that is actually digestible and understandable to just the general public. This is where we've gone wrong, I think, on this issue of climate. And because the amazing stories of everything we get to see every day, it's not cutting through. And we're just, quite frankly, not great at it. But maybe there are some, players out there who are excellent at it. And I like how Kate kind of framed it.
Great. We're do one last question as a wrap up. So you all have insight into hundreds, if not thousands, of startups that are kind of thinking of innovations in the climate space. 5-10 years from now, kind of where is climate innovation headed? Give us all kind of a sneak peek of what do you think is coming down the road that we could be excited and inspired by?
I'll just build on the point that I made earlier. Climate tech to climate everything, right? Climate is a lens. We are moving in that direction. That's where the jobs are going to come from. And, it's not going to happen by accident. It's going to be incredibly intentional by this community. But, yeah, the climate everything is where we're going to be.
I think we all talk about Sublime and Commonwealth Fusion and geothermal. So I'll pick a random one for fun. One of the teams in residency at the Engine is doing synthetic biology to grow plant cells in a lab. And so think of reforestation, think of all of these different applications, really interesting spin on climate. So I think it's new materials, it's new ways to create them that are have less carbon footprint. So the company is called Foray Bio, just as something new to think about, not just all of the typical players.
I'll give I want to give another shout out because we never talk about Tomorrow.io, which is also a kick-ass climate company based here in Boston, Israel, and is digital first, but went on to launch their own satellites, which is an extraordinary decision they made to be able to provide better data back into the system. So that's another one we can talk about. I hope we see more, and I'm really interested in where innovation will emerge from the intersection of things. So I think we've been very interested in following climate, health, food, and the opportunities that sort of changes and pressures in all of those systems will create when you add in the technology overlay around that. So I think we're really excited about that and where that will take us next.
What's my time frame? 10 years?
5, 10.
5?
Just give us some 5, 10, something. You can go 20 if you want, if you've got something really innovative that's not going to be ready by then.
I think, this may sound repetitive. I want us to be living in a world where the market is pulling through low or zero carbon solutions across all sectors of the economy. And this is particularly important in energy, and I'll tell you why. Because with the hyperscalers, the AI, the data centers, make no mistake, there is a strong movement to grow the energy load, and it's going to happen with or without clean energy, without zero carbon energy. So we got to be in a world in 5 to 10 years where the pull-through, the vast majority of that pull-through from the market is a zero carbon option.
Great. Well, I want everyone to take a second to thank all of our panelists. I think we can see, why we are so lucky here in